And then Andrew, he has the music in the folder, and he goes to a Pepsi machine, and then he looks to the chair, and the music's gone. What happened to the folder?
I think that Fletcher took the folder. He knew Tanner wasn't going to be a great, so I think Fletcher looks for opportunities and seizes them. So I think Fletcher just maybe happened to be nearby and took the folder.
Damien Chazelle's blistering, chaotic, and astonishing film Whiplash not only is it one of the most universally loved films this century, but it's just my tempo.
And it really is astounding. It's perfect, beat by beat, production, acting, story. The music's incredible. It won a few Oscars, deservedly so. And it's just an incredible debut. It's one of the better debuts of the century for any filmmaker. And in my opinion, it's still Damien Chazelle's best movie.
I think it probably still is his best movie. First Man is still my favorite Damien Chazelle movie, and obviously La La Land had more Oscar nominees than any movie in history, I believe, so it's also a very loved film, not to mention Babylon, maybe his most divisive movie yet, but when you go back to Whiplash, you see the genius in storytelling, the brilliant director that he is. Written and directed by Damien Chazelle, Whiplash came out in 2014. On IMDb, it is an 8.5.
Wow.
Putting it at number 41 on the user rating list for all-time films there, with 951,000 ratings and reviews, which is absurd. Rotten Tomatoes, it is a 94% critic score, 94% audience score. On Letterboxd, Whiplash is a 4.4.
Very good.
I believe it's the top 20 movie on there as well.
Wow.
And on a budget of just $3.3 million, Whiplash grossed $49 million at the box office. It won 3 Academy Awards off 5 nominations, including winning Best Supporting Actor for J.K. Simmons, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound Mixing, as well as nominations for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. When it first came out, it premiered in 6 theaters, grossing $130,000. That's $22,000 per theater, finishing in 4th place. But after 3 months and earning $7 million to capitalize on the Academy Awards, the film Whiplash opened to 1,000 theaters, and it ended up pulling in $49 million total at the box office.
And this is actually a Blumhouse film.
I know her.
Jason Blum from Blumhouse, who's famous for producing horror films, actually helped fund this movie.
Yeah, so obviously they built their studio off the Paranormal Activity movies, and from 2010 to 2014, doing 2 to 4 movies a year, but then Whiplash in 2014 was the best film they produced up until that point.
And Get Out as well, another Best Picture nominee and another fantastic film. I think that Blumhouse producing this film, Jason Blum saw the brilliance of the script. This was a Sundance Lab film, so Damien Chazelle made it with Sundance in their program, and that's what he did with his short film. So this was just a short film with Johnny Simmons, I believe, played the role of Andrew. J.K. did play Fletcher again in that short film, and so the short film was actually that first studio band practice scene. So it's about 18 minutes long, so it's that entire interaction from Andrew stepping into the studio band room for the first time to being destroyed by Fletcher, and then by the end of it being emotionally torn down. So that was the entire short film that he made at the Sundance Labs. And then it was just such a hit. It was so well done that he was able to get funding for a feature film. And then this won the Audience Award at Sundance. It was a big hit at Sundance, and then it got distribution. So this worked from the ground up. And it's just really impressive. It was such a good short script that he managed to get an accomplished veteran actor like J.K. Simmons involved. That's something that's so great about the Sundance Labs is it connects young filmmakers and up-and-coming students with actual film producers and actual film actors to maybe step into the shoes and play a role in this young guy's little short film. He loved the script, so
His little short film.
Yeah, so J.K. was like, I love this role. There's a lot of potential here, and he clearly saw that. J.K. is very smart. He also did the same thing with Juno. He saw that Juno was like a really great script and was acted in that, and he was like the biggest name in that film at that time. So he has a great eye for excellent screenwriting, that I think, as an actor. And then Whiplash is just, in a lot of ways, the J.K. Simmons show.
Oh, it's a 2-character study,
Yeah.
but J.K. Simmons is the key to this film being a masterpiece that it is. Now, this film follows Andrew Neiman, played by Miles Teller, who is an ambitious young jazz drummer in pursuit of rising to the top of his elite conservatory, as well as being just one of the great drummers of all time in the 21st century. Terrence Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons, is an instructor known for his terrifying teaching methods, discovers Andrew and transfers the aspiring drummer into his top jazz ensemble, forever changing the young man's life. But Andrew's passion to achieve perfection quickly spirals into obsession as his ruthless teacher pushes him to the brink of his ability and his sanity. I have some great fun facts for this film as well.
Let's hear 'em.
I would love to just run through them. So, the entire film of Whiplash was shot in just 19 days. And nearly a full day was dedicated to a scene in Fletcher's office between Andrew and Fletcher that got cut from the final movie. However, Damien Chazelle believes that this scene ultimately helped Miles and JK develop their chemistry for the film. The film was shot again in 19 days, but it was also edited and submitted to Sundance in just 10 weeks, which is insane.
Wow.
3 months, basically. For the slapping scene, J.K. Simmons and Miles Teller filmed several takes with Simmons only miming the slap. For the final take, Simmons and Teller decided to film the scene with a real, genuine slap. This is the take that is in the film. It always works out that way. There's always like the story you hear about someone getting hit on camera, and you're like, oh, we tried like 10 times without getting hit. Jonah Hill in The Wolf of Wall Street.
With Bernthal?
Yeah, it's like Scorsese's like, how if he actually hits you this time? And that's always the take that's
He laid
used.
him out.
Yeah. It always works like that. J.K. Simmons has won 47 awards for his role as Fletcher, obviously including the top prestigious award of Best Supporting Actor at the Academy Awards.
I think it was absolutely no competition for any other actor in that category that year. He's that good in this movie.
And ironically, well, not ironically, but Ethan Hawke, he was nominated as well for Boyhood.
Uh-huh.
And that's a role that he had been doing already for 10 years, essentially, because this was something that he'd been developing with Linklater for that long. And then J.K. Simmons only shot this in 19 days. So it's kind of interesting. Like, obviously, he put a ton of work into it, but Boyhood was shot over the course of 10 years.
Yeah.
Ethan Hawke putting that much work into it in terms of his time and growth as an actor. J.K. busted his butt to be Fletcher and was perfect for the role, only filmed in 19 days.
The irony, yeah. It's a funny thing, the way to look at it.
Now, having taught himself to play the drums at age 15, Miles Teller performed much of the drumming scene in Whiplash. Supporting actor and jazz drummer Nate Lang, who plays Taylor's rival Carl Tanner in the film, he's the first core drummer that we meet in the movie. He trained Teller in the specifics of jazz drumming, including changing his grip from match to traditional. For certain scenes, professional drummer Kyle Crane served as Teller's drum double.
You can tell that Tanner is a real drummer.
For sure.
Yeah.
But about 40% of Miles Teller's drumming was actually used in the soundtrack for Whiplash.
That's fantastic. And you can see, like, they absolutely cast real musicians. And these are real pros. And it really makes a difference. You can see, I mean, I'm not a musician, but it just looks right. Like, if I'm watching this movie, I'm like, this seems like these are real musicians. You know what I mean?
They're really blowing into their instruments. They're really playing.
And I thought it was smart to cast a real professional drummer, Nate Lang, as Tanner, because even though I will say the only con to this movie, he's very expressive with his face a little too much sometimes.
When he's in the background.
Yeah, he's like looking at stuff. He's like, interesting. I'm like,
he's like, let me look at that chart again.
Yeah, he's like, okay, all right. He's a little too much.
Fletcher says like that Andrew's off. He's like, yeah, he's off tempo.
Yeah, he like scratches his chin. It's like he goes a little too far. You can tell he's not an actor. He's a drummer. And so I thought it was smart to actually cast, even as the alternate and the first core player, to cast an actual drummer. It made sense.
Yeah, because like a rule for being an extra is like you don't want to distract from the person that's the lead in the shot.
He did, but he did do
great.
He did do a good job in a couple of his dialogue scenes with Miles Teller, especially the folder scene. He did for a drummer. He did an excellent job in those scenes.
The folder scene is awesome at the first big competition they have now. The basic story Fletcher recounts about Charlie Parker, the famous one where he says that the other musician threw a cymbal at his head, and obviously, according to Fletcher, that's how Charlie Parker became Charlie Parker. He was so embarrassed on stage that he spent a year training and became who he was. There'd be no Bird without Charlie Parker.
Ask me what I named my boat.
Bird! He's not a man, he's a god. That's it. We're going to Naples. We always have to reference talent to Mr. Ripley. So, even though this story is true, his description is inaccurate according to historians. Drummer Joe Jones did indeed throw a cymbal in response to Parker's playing, but he did not throw it as a physical attack on Parker. He simply threw it to the stage floor as a signal that Parker should leave the stage. Jazz historians have also said that this was not a response to poor performance, as Fletcher says in the film, but because the older musicians disapproved of the fast improvisations Parker was playing that became his trademark. So, you changed up a little bit for the movie for a better story, for the better plot and better story arcs.
It works better, and I have to say, I do know from speaking with some jazz musicians and then seeing online musicians, they aren't really fans of this movie, ironically, even though it's probably the most famous movie about jazz made in the last 50 years. I think that it works, and the movie isn't, it's not, a lot of them say that, playing jazz isn't just about trying really hard and like practicing till your hands bleed. There's a lot more to it, but this is a film, and it's a fictional story, and everything works for the movie. It's not completely accurate, obviously, and there aren't really teachers like throwing chairs at students and stuff. But this is a fictional narrative, and Fletcher works because he's an incredible antagonist and he's a horrible villain. And like we all often say, movies are only as good as their villains, and Fletcher really makes this movie incredible. He drives that conflict, and he raises the stakes for Andrew. So it's okay to exaggerate the dominating teacher for something like this. And it's okay if it's not completely accurate to jazz playing or the life of a jazz musician. But I have also heard accounts of, there are very intense teachers. So that's true. But I think that maybe some jazz musicians might read too much into this film and don't enjoy it.
Sure, I get that. I understand. I've heard the same thing from jazz musicians, and we have a jazz drummer that's a friend. We did a La La Land Whiplash episode in 2021, and he guested on the episode. And he's like, my hands have never bled from drumming before, but he's been playing his whole life. Obviously, Andrew would have been playing his whole life, so we would have had all the calluses built up and everything. But blisters do happen for sure.
It's showing the extreme stakes.
And there's a component to this film with Fletcher that's unrealistic. Obviously, the intense emotional and physical abuse in this film. I think a lot of people are turned off by this movie because of that. And it's effective in storytelling because, like you said, it's a great antagonist, a great villain, as well as you feel trapped like Andrew. You feel trapped like in his chair because whenever he's getting berated, he's just frozen in his drum kit. He's just sitting there. And Chazelle does a great job putting you in the shoes of Andrew, like you're taking that abuse from Fletcher the whole time. It's hard to watch, but it's great for storytelling because with Whiplash, if Fletcher is a nice guy, Whiplash isn't a masterpiece.
Or even if he was even if he was still an asshole but not as extreme as he is, it wouldn't work as well.
It's not a perfect movie, but it makes it a perfect movie. They're not promoting it.
Yeah.
That's the irony with movies like this or Joker. It's so intense, it's so visceral that people get put off by it or they feel intense emotions. But you watch a superhero movie where the whole movie's physical abuse, but the stakes are not there. It doesn't feel real. Or John Wick, ironically, like he shoots 30 people in the face in the first act and no one bats an eye, but someone gets verbally abused in Whiplash and people are put off by it, but that's because it feels so real.
Yeah, it's the tone of it. This movie is actually, it is a little different from anything Chazelle has done. Most notably, it was shot digitally. So all of his films since Whiplash have been shot on film by Linus Sandgren, who is, in my opinion, one of the best working cinematographers right now. People don't really know his name. But he had a different DP for this one. He had a veteran DP. They've never worked together since. They shot it digitally, so that probably accounts for how fast the turnaround was. I'm guessing they did that because they wanted to get the Sundance submission in time. So they shot it digitally, edited it ASAP, and sent it out within 10 weeks.
Plus, they only had $3.3 million.
Yeah, exactly.
So it cost a lot of money.
But it does have a lot of his trademarks in terms of things he likes to do with the camera, and a lot of you get a ton of the whip pans.
Yeah.
We get a lot of great editing.
So that's what he takes and goes left, right.
Yeah.
Obviously, in La La Land, one of the most famous shots is when they're in the club and he's playing piano and Emma Stone's dancing. So Mia and Sebastian back, forth.
Exactly.
In this movie a couple times.
We get a lot of great fast push-ins, and he's done that a lot since he most notably in this film, the final shot of that super fast push-in of Andrew playing. It goes from pretty wide all the way up to him and then cuts to black. We see that in all of his films now. Those are two of his big trademarks that he likes to do. But now is one of his major trademarks that he likes to shoot on film. And because he can afford it and he has the time and he has the crew to be able to handle it properly. This film, it doesn't look quite like his film shot by Linus because Linus is a fucking genius. But it still is incredibly stylized, very well shot, and remarkably edited. This movie is so well edited, it deserved the Oscar win. And not just for the final performance, which is fantastic. Like, it won for that final performance, but the entire editing all around. We get these really great little shots, and Chazelle and the team do a great job of putting into the perspective of Andrew, especially like he's sitting in the studio band, he's kind of nervous, and he's looking around. You get that, he sees the other drummer talking to his girlfriend, and we get like a close-up of them. We're getting his perspective, Andrew's perspective, looking at things. We get all these random little insert shots with kind of deep focus, and they're really inserting you into the mind of this person. So they did a wonderful job of cutting together these little moments within scenes that normally you wouldn't see this kind of imagery. I think the editing is really dynamic and really powerful, and then the lighting and cinematography is very strong. So if you think, when you watch this film, there's a contrast between warm tones of lighting and then cold tones of lighting. So all of the cold lighting is around the world. So we get lots of greens, and we get lots of cool blues for lights. And this is generally exteriors and walk around his apartment his dorm building, things like that. But what are the warm-looking areas of this film? The movie theater is warmly lit, and then the studio band basement is warmly lit. So these places of like great art and passion for Andrew, and connection to things he loves, whether it be movies with his dad or playing music, all those locations are lit with warm lighting, whereas everything else is green and blue and very cold. It sucks the life out of Andrew whenever he's not in these areas.
And it's so warm, and it looks like sort of like you're on a drum kit, the light reflecting off your cymbal, so it feels like that gold aura around the drum kit in general. Plus, like on stage every time, it's very warmly lit as
true,
well.
yeah.
And obviously some more trademarks. The final shot, close up on eyes of the two main characters, which obviously gets here. I would say the pushing into the trumpet while it's playing. Yeah, obviously in this one in Babylon, and La La Land for sure. But I think that he does like a great Scorsese impression in this movie too with the insert shots. It's really effective. I would say my favorite shot in terms of being in Andrew's perspective or feeling like you're inside of his shoes is when he's practicing, I think, for the second montage or third montage, and his hands are bleeding profusely, and he gets the bucket of ice going.
Yeah.
And so he shoves his bloody hand inside the bucket of ice, but Damien Chazelle gets the shot sideways. It's a really cool look, but I always look at the perspective of like Andrew's so tired, he's like lumped over in the side of his drum kit. So like from his point of view, it looks like his hand's going in sideways. Mm-hmm. So I think things like that make you feel like you're that character, like you're exhausted, you're falling over your drum kit, you're dunking your hands in ice. And it's a really interesting shot, I think, for being in his perspective.
That's a great insert shot. And they do a great job with the sound design, too. They take away sound a few times in the film, and they bring in really kind of like not so much scary, but piercing sound designs. They'll make a tone, and they'll showcase Andrew's disillusionment, his exhaustion, things like that. And they do that with the sound design as well. They'll take away the sound effects and sound design of rooms and just put us like in his headspace for a moment.
Damien Chazelle really obliterated a specific genre of movie too, a specific type of usually drama, and that's the musical prodigy genre. And I love when filmmakers and storytellers just flip a specific thing on its head and do something you've never seen before, where this movie just obliterates the prodigy genre. Usually the prodigy, they're so talented, you know they're talented, but with Whiplash, as an audience member, we don't specifically really know whether or not Andrew's the best drummer in the movie. We don't know if he's the best in his class. We know he's obviously very good, but from our perspective watching, and even from Andrew's perspective, we feel so much self-doubt that Fletcher puts into us, because the entire film, Fletcher is breaking Andrew down every chance he gets, all the way to the final sequence when they both destroy each other to achieve their goals, which they do achieve. So I think, when we have a musical prodigy film, they're kind of cliche at times. None of them really stand out so well, except for Whiplash. I've never felt so much doubt in a character or with a character like I have in Whiplash. And when it comes to achieving goals, they both achieve what they want, but it takes destroying each other, almost destroying each other to get there. By the end of the film, Andrew becomes one of the greats, the best drum solo ever. And also Fletcher gets to create his own Charlie Parker. He got to mold the next Charlie Parker of this generation. So they both got what they want in the end, but it took everything from them.
And there's a great scene that actually helps illustrate that doesn't involve Fletcher, and it's the scene when Andrew goes home to visit his family, and no one in his family really gets drumming. They don't really understand that being in this band is a huge deal in the jazz world and in the world of this kind of art form.
He says I'm in the best band in
Yeah,
America, and
yeah.
like, oh, that's nice.
Do you
How's
get
the
anything,
drumming?
a job for it? And then a lot that they're showing in that scene how many people don't understand it in terms of, scoring a touchdown, a milestone like that, or winning a game, that milestone. They don't understand how that relates to something like playing jazz drums, where what he's doing is like scoring a touchdown in the NCAA Championship game. And it's difficult for Andrew to make people understand what he's doing and how good he is, or at how good he thinks he is. He definitely is great because he's at Schaefer, the best school in the country for this. He made the studio band of the best instructor in the school. So he's in a way. He says that joke about his brother who scored a touchdown. He's like, it's D3.
Well, they're not brothers.
I mean brothers, cousins.
Yeah, cousin.
It's D3.
Yeah, it's Division 3.
It's Division 3. And so
Come and play for us. 4 words you'll never hear from the NFL.
yeah, that's a great back and forth, but it illustrates that maybe a lot of people don't understand how talented you have to be and how much work goes into making a band like this.
There's a belief that Whiplash promotes a misleading idea of genius. Now, Forrest Wickman of Slate said the film distorted jazz, adding that in all likelihood, Fletcher isn't making a Charlie Parker. He's making the kind of musician that would throw a cymbal at him. In The New Yorker, Richard Brody said Whiplash honors neither jazz nor cinema. To them, I say it's just a movie. And I think kind of like how La La Land, jazz is dying. It's brought up in this film how jazz is dying as well. And it's between John Legend's character and Gosling's character, Sebastian, where Sebastian wants to keep jazz alive. How do you keep jazz alive? You got to change it up a little bit to keep it hip, to keep it modern, to keep it fresh. This movie brought jazz probably to so many people's ears and eyes that probably never discovered jazz before. So in a way, if anything, it's promoting jazz and building jazz up in a new way.
I bet a lot of musicians were inspired to be musicians because of this movie.
100%.
Or maybe even to pursue it more seriously because of a movie like this.
Or just someone listening to jazz casually now.
Yeah,
but good jazz.
It's just a movie.
Like, relax, guys.
This is not a jazz documentary.
That's
what I'm saying about jazz fans aren't fans of this movie.
No, but they're not jazz fans. They're just film critics.
They sound like they know about
but
jazz.
The thing with this movie, it's what I'm talking about with Joker or something like that, where it feels so real because it's so well made. It's crafted brilliantly, directed insanely well. Incredible characters. You feel like you're these people. And because of that, people take things really powerfully in terms of interpreting things from it, which you should in a good way, but also at the end of the day, it's also just a movie.
I think that this movie's it's more of it's a character study than it is a musical movie. I mean, it is about musicians, but it is a character study. Andrew and Fletcher, it's about them. It's about their relationship. It's about them as individuals. It's about pushing yourself towards an obsession and committing yourself entirely to something and taking that risk in life of, I want to sacrifice everything to achieve one special thing. And is it worth taking that risk, and can I achieve that risk? And, many of his films are about obsession. So you have Andrew and Fletcher obsessed about music in this film. And then you have, I wouldn't say that Gosling and Stone's characters are obsessed quite as much as these two are, obviously. But
what are you talking about?
Okay.
Sebastian is obsessed with jazz.
Obsessed with jazz.
Are you kidding
Okay,
me?
he's obsessed with...
looks like he's from 1960s. He has the stool that one guy took a fart on.
That's true. All right. They're obsessed. Neil Armstrong obsessed with getting to the moon. And then Babylon, it's not so much about obsession, but more about the enticement of the world of Hollywood. And so I wouldn't say Babylon doesn't have the obsession themes in it, but the other 3 films do.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
You're right.
obsession.
Sebastian is obsessed with jazz.
And Mia's obsessed with being a star, well, being an actor as well. So I think obsession.
Well,
is
I think
one of the
there's
key
a difference
themes in
between
these
obsession and then really wanting it. I wouldn't say that Mia's obsessed.
The whole point of them breaking up is because they have to be obsessed with their goals.
True. At the end, they have to commit to their goals.
They're obsessed in the
together.
beginning. Then, well, that's the point of the movie. Obviously, I think is sometimes you have to let someone go that you love for obsession, for your goals.
Yeah.
but this isn't an episode about La La Land. But
It's not.
obsession is one of the best traits you can have in a lead character or lead characters in the film, and both characters have obsessions. I wouldn't say they're with music. They're more specifically, Andrew's obsession is becoming the greatest drummer alive, one of the greats, the great of the century. Then Fletcher's obsession isn't with jazz; it's with creating the next Charlie Parker. He knows he's not an all-time great musician, but like when he loses his job at Schaefer, he tells Andrew, even though he knows it was Andrew that ratted on him, people didn't understand what I was doing at Schaefer. I wasn't there to conduct. Any idiot can conduct. This is his quotes, not mine. Any idiot can conduct. I was there to push people beyond their boundaries, beyond their limits. I was there to create the next Charlie Parker. And I tried. I didn't achieve it, which he's still digging Andrew at this point. All the way, everything they've been through, the sequence when, Andrew finds him at the jazz club playing piano. Even to his face, he says, "I'd never made a Charlie Parker." And you can see Andrew like, that motherfucker still won't let this go. He's still pushing me because in a way he is. I never found a Charlie Parker, but I tried. Well, he says it right to Andrew, who you could say was maybe one of his best students ever.
I think that Fletcher did see a lot in Andrew. There's so many ways in which Fletcher tested and fucked with Andrew in a lot of ways. And I love the opening scene of Andrew just practicing in that random studio room, and then Fletcher walking in. He's like, "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir." "Then why'd you stop playing?" And then he starts playing, and then, "Did I ask you to start playing again?" "I ask you why you stopped playing, and you start playing like a monkey."
You wind up like a wind-up monkey.
And then he tests Andrew a few times doing the double time, a couple other things, and then when Andrew's incredibly focused, he hears the door close and Fletcher leaves. Then he comes back and he's like, "Oh, maybe he's coming back to compliment me," but no, oopsie daisy, I forgot my jacket. So even in that first scene, you see that Fletcher, he does not, something that Fletcher never does is he never shows admiration, and he never says anything positive about anyone's playing whatsoever. It's always pushing or rejecting. There's no validation for his musicians in any way, shape, or form. Nothing's ever good enough until it's perfect. And I think that's an example of what you were talking about earlier with other films about a prodigy or a great artist or whatever. They'll receive validation either from success or from other characters. But in this film, Andrew doesn't receive a single iota of validation from Fletcher at all, except for "you're in the part." But it's not like a congratulations, you're in the part. It's like, you finally earned the part.
After 10 hours of drumming.
You finally fucking did it, Andrew. Great job. All right, we're playing tomorrow.
No, he doesn't even say great
No,
job.
I'm just saying that tone. That's the tone. Yeah. It's not even a congratulations. It's like, you got the part.
Even when you're perfect. Yeah, all right. Because when you're doing well, he doesn't even acknowledge your existence, Fletcher. Like, you can see him like a lion stalking his prey. He's just going back and forth to the different parts of the orchestra. He's going to percussion. He's going to the brass. He's going to the strings. He's like, all right, who's messing up right now? Who's messing up right now? But if he doesn't look at you, you're doing a good job.
He constantly is seeking the weakness of the band, and that's a good point because there's multiple times when, especially in that first performance, when he's worried about Andrew at first because he took over for Tanner, who lost the folder. We'll get to. At first, he's hyper-focused on Andrew and his playing for the first minute of the song. And then he's like, okay, Andrew's doing fine. So then he begins moving across the stage, looking for who needs my help, my guidance right now. So he does do that as a conductor, constantly seeking the weakest links of his band.
Yeah, and the thing with admiration, Andrew doesn't even really receive it from his father. The only family he has left, and he doesn't have any friends. His girlfriend, Nicole, he breaks up with halfway through the movie. They haven't even been dating that long, maybe a semester of school by the time he breaks up with her. But he doesn't even get really anything from his father, not until the very end of the movie, which is one of my favorite shots. But even when Andrew's, his dad doesn't understand even him. He even says to him, "I don't understand you," because he eats around the raisin nuts and the popcorn. That's just a small metaphor of how different they really are in terms of Andrew wants his father to see him the way that Andrew wants him to see him. So he wants his father to see him as this great musician. But his father doesn't understand music. His father's a writer, a decently successful teacher, a writer, but he doesn't know anything about music. That's why I think Fletcher does a great job for his character in terms of knowing how to push people's buttons and destroy them emotionally. He always asks personal questions, like he takes Andrew to the side before his first test in studio band, his first days, like takes him to the hallway. Like we see some glimpses of Fletcher being cool and nice. He's
Very
like,
congenial.
He's like, hey man, yeah, just have fun out there. Just relax. It's the key, you know. Cool, man. Awesome. Yeah, we're gonna have fun. Your parents, musicians, but he's asking about his personal life. That's why he always attacks everyone personally. He attacks Andrew for his mom leaving him and his dad being a failure. He attacks Tanner for being homosexual multiple times. He attacks Flannery Connolly for being Irish and calling him a leprechaun. So he finds the thing that maybe is the easiest to attack you with and goes after it emotionally and physically eventually with Andrew. But with Andrew, he never even gets admiration from his father. His father even kind of doesn't defend him. Like that family dinner with the cousins, he's going back and forth with the college kids and then with, I'm assuming, his uncle. Or maybe these are just friends or close friends.
I think
of
it
the
might be
family.
uncle cousins is my
Could be
guess.
familial.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But either way, the dynamic fits for either cousins or family friends.
Yeah.
His father doesn't even stand up for him when they're kind of going after Andrew. And what does his father do? He actually adds to taking away, to bringing down Andrew. He says, to end that scene, his father says to him, have you heard from Lincoln Center yet? And that's basically a dig at Andrew because Andrew's life goal is to be one of the greats and also to be a drummer for Lincoln Center, which is one of the most prestigious places to play music in the country. And so no one's supporting Andrew, except for really you could say his girlfriend, but she doesn't understand him either. No one really understands Andrew until the final scene of the movie.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any friends. He avoids people at school. And he also has that line, they ask, do you have any friends? And he goes, I don't see the point in them. And so he self-isolates himself to be just to obsess and to become completely immersed in drumming. And Fletcher understands that. And Fletcher constantly tests him and pushes him from the start. So when he enters the first band class and he's looking for a new player, he asks them, and he goes from instrument to instrument, having them test out a couple of bars, and he says no to everybody. Then he says, okay, drummer, come here. And then it's actually, he means Andrew, and Andrew, he invites Andrew to his class the next morning at 6 a.m. He says, B16, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Andrew wakes up a few minutes late, he panics, and he's running to the class, and he gets there, and it's empty. And then he realizes that class is actually scheduled for 9 a.m. Not class, but band practice is scheduled for 9 a.m. So he has to sit there for 3 hours. So right from the get-go, Fletcher is pushing him and testing his will and testing his resolve by being, all right, I'm going to have you come 3 hours early and see how you'll do in that class, sitting there for that long, waking up that early. And also, like you said, learning about his life, then tearing him down, throwing the chair at him. When he does get the core part, it's short-lived as a reward because Fletcher immediately brings Connolly on, who they both know is not nearly as talented as Andrew, but he brings Connolly on just to fuck with Andrew, just to push him, just to frustrate him.
And what's he do? He specifically gives Connolly specific music, and he got all day to practice it. And then at the end of studio band, he says, all right, you guys just compete for the part. Everyone has an equal chance here. And then Andrew's like, I haven't even looked at the music yet. And Connolly's been practicing all goddamn day. Obviously, Connolly's going to beat him at these charts, but he loses at the charts. He's like, are you kidding me? This is my part. That shit wins over me because, like you said, Fletcher's pushing him.
Yeah, in a way, he says later on in the film that he was using Connolly as basically a tool to push Andrew, because I think he saw immediately the will, the resolve, the drive, and the talent in Andrew, but he had to mold it. And they use the character of Sean as an example as another Andrew.
Sean Casey?
So Sean Casey, the trumpet player that Fletcher had years ago, like 6 years ago, who was not doing well, but then they put him in studio band. Fletcher pushed him and molded him and drove him, and eventually he graduated and he was playing for, what was he playing trumpet for? Some great band, an institution. So he was extremely respected trumpet player, and he became the best version of himself through Fletcher. And so
However,
yeah. So we're seeing
commit suicide.
Yeah. So we're saying the same kind of thing. Oh, maybe this is what Fletcher's doing for Andrew. Maybe he's just really pushing him and to succeed. And Fletcher says that Sean died in a car accident, a terrible tragedy. So then Andrew, I think, gets a little confidence in like, okay, maybe Fletcher's pushing me to this to be great. And this musician, he achieved greatness through Fletcher, so maybe this can happen to me. But then we learn the flip side of that in the second half of the film, that Sean actually committed suicide, that he was driven to intense anxiety and depression through the abuse, emotionally and physically, of Fletcher on him as a student, and he never was able to escape that, and it drove him to kill himself. And so then we see the stakes and the risks here involved of taking on this relationship with Fletcher, of letting him be your teacher, being your trainer, and in letting him abuse you. You could lead yourself to ruin, or you could achieve greatness. And so then that adds new stakes to Andrew's situation, learning that true outcome to Sean's life.
Now, has every student received this kind of abuse from Fletcher? And I think the answer is yes and no. I believe every student that Fletcher comes across, if he sees something in them and obviously invites them to studio band to see what they got, he obviously berates everyone individually. You can tell the environment. As soon as Andrew's there for the first time in Studio B, everyone's obviously tuning their instruments immediately. As soon as the door opens, they're silent. And they all are looking down in fear and terror in a lot of ways, because you can tell that Fletcher has gone after every single person in this room individually at different moments. And obviously, he breaks them in on the first day like he breaks Andrew in on the first day. Specifically, probably the hardest ever he's probably gone after a student could probably be Andrew, maybe because he sees the most potential there. But you can tell every student has faced this abuse. However, Andrew faces the most abuse because he can take the most abuse, and he pushes himself further than anybody that Fletcher's ever had for a student. So that's why Andrew gets the most you've ever seen probably in this classroom from anyone from Fletcher, because he'll go farther than anybody. He has more drive than anybody, but that's what it takes for him to become great. That doesn't mean that's how you achieve greatness. You don't have to be physically abused or emotionally abused to become great. But for this character, for these two characters, for this movie, it works really well. And that's why Andrew, I think, receives more abuse than anybody.
That's a great point, because in Andrew's first scene in the studio band, he's not the first person Fletcher goes after. It's the out-of-tune brass player. And the brass player, upon being berated by Fletcher, leaves, breaks down, cries, and leaves. And, he gives up.
And he wasn't even out of tune.
Yeah, he wasn't even out of tune. So Andrew's able to constantly withstand the abuse and keep pushing himself and to keep taking it the next day. Tanner's another example of someone who, throughout all that abuse, he couldn't take it anymore, so he became pre-med, completely changed his major and his studies. So the other characters, I think that's a great point. Andrew goes through the extremes with Fletcher because he keeps being able to push himself to walk in the next day and take it again, whereas every other student, especially in the past, has probably just given up after one or two interactions with Fletcher. Andrew keeps taking it.
Or you become good enough where you just kind of disappear in the band, where you're fine, but you don't want to get pushed anymore.
Yeah.
You just want to stay there and graduate and finish up and maybe get an okay job playing music somewhere, but you're not going to become one of the greats because you're not being pushed like Fletcher is pushing Andrew. And it comes to that concept of talent versus drive. That is in every kind of art form or physicality, or whether it's sports or filmmaking or writing or anything like that. There's a point where talent can take you, then there's a point where drive can take you. But then when you have a character or somebody who's got both, you become one of the greats, and you can become one of the greats. But how do you get that drive? And of course, like we said earlier, this isn't the only way to become greats, but it works goddamn well in this movie. It really does.
Absolutely.
How about we take a few moments, we'll head to our intermission and do superlatives, and then we'll come back to Whiplash. But let's start with superlatives. How's that sound?
You're doing great, man.
Shut up. All right, superlative number one, Anthony. Who is the MVP of the film Whiplash?
It's going to be Damien Chazelle.
Why?
I mean, your film doesn't get 5 Oscar nominations by accident, and it's just perfectly directed, executed. He's great with actors. He pulls incredible performances. Nobody saw this coming from J.K. Simmons, and he had been acting for 20 years. You know what I mean? This changed his career. So all around, from start to finish, this film, its execution is just beat for beat, flat out perfect.
It's one of the best debuts ever, and that's why I also give the MVP award to Damien Chazelle as well. He's just one of the hottest filmmakers in Hollywood right
so
now.
Hot right
only
now.
4 films under his belt, which is astounding what he's been able to achieve. He's going to go down as one of the best ever by the end of his career. He's already in those early conversations of one of the great directors of this generation. And this is obviously, you see everything about his style being developed here but it's in its rawest form, which for bands or musicians, for filmmakers, sometimes that early film is their best and still holds the test of time. This is going to be maybe his most timeless movie ever, and it's phenomenal, but you see the rawness, you see the skill in storytelling, the sharpness, the visceral quality that he has in his movies, plus adding such great music, and I think bringing jazz to people who never heard it before, really took it seriously before with a movie like Whiplash.
100%.
What's the best scene in the movie?
The best scene is the first studio band practice for Andrew.
All right.
That's the scene for me. That's it. So basically the short film scene.
I think the best scene is the final show, the final concert between Fletcher going after Andrew and Andrew going after Fletcher, and I think it's one of the best endings in a movie this century.
I love the ending.
I think the ending really makes this a masterpiece, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Gives me goosebumps.
What's the best shot in Whiplash?
The final shot. It's the fast push in on Andrew as he's finishing the song with the flashing lights, and it's just fantastic.
I like how it cuts to black before he gets to hit the drum kit, too. He's about to hit the drum kit, and it cuts to black. But you hear it. You hear the music. You hear him. He's going down with the stick, cuts to black, then you hear the music drumming. I think it's an interesting artistic choice.
I'm trying to think of, because it's the push in.
Yeah.
And isn't he going crazy on the drums?
But then he's about to do it again.
Oh, the final one.
So the final one, and Damien Chazelle cuts before he hits the drum kit.
Gotcha, I know what you mean now.
But you hear it, that he continues the audio. It's a really cool decision.
What about you? What's your favorite shot?
My favorite shot is during the final performance, the final show, when Andrew's going ham, and he's in the middle of the greatest solo ever put on stage before. And Andrew's dad, obviously before that happened, what happens is Fletcher tricks Andrew, gives him the wrong music, doesn't tell him what we're playing, to humiliate him and ruin him and tarnish his career forever as a musician, because these people won't forget. And then Andrew goes backstage, and his father obviously knows what happened. He goes to hug him and show support for Andrew because he loves him so much. And then Andrew, instead of going with his father, he leaves and goes and puts on the solo. Mid-solo, the camera cuts to his father, who's backstage looking through half-open doors, and his father just has this look of astonishment, of genuine disbelief of what he's watching, this greatness. He finally sees Andrew, like I said earlier, the way Andrew's always wanted his father to see him, as the greatest drummer alive. All of this work, from practicing from he was a kid, all the work he's done in school, and now the trauma he's been going through at Schaefer, this is what it's all been for. And someone who doesn't even understand music, who doesn't understand jazz, is having a moment of extreme enjoyment or just disbelief of what he's watching. He's seeing a master at work. And no matter what it is, when you witness mastery of something, you understand it and you get it even if you're not familiar with that art form.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's actually the most important shot of the film. It shows the connection, the connection of the father and son.
Yeah. He gets it now.
Agree.
He gets everything now, and it's a beautiful shot. And the guy who plays his father, do you know who he's in?
He's the villain of Aliens.
He's in Aliens. He plays Burke in Aliens. I've always been like, where do I know this guy from? And I looked it up last time. It's fucking Burke from Aliens.
It's the guy from Aliens. It's great.
All right, the next one's a no-brainer. Who's the best actor in Whiplash?
It's J.K. J.K. is amazing. He's astounding. He makes the movie. He steals every scene. He's the driving force of conflict. It's just a sight to behold. It's one of the best supporting actor performances of the century so far.
Yeah, when you think of best, just acting in general of this century, obviously so many roles stand out to you in your mind if you just make a list, but J.K. Simmons as Terrence Fletcher has to be on there. Has to be on that list. 47 wins for this role. 47 acting wins for this role. Insane. Now,
where does he keep all those trophies? Gotta get a whole fucking house for all those trophies.
It's like Happy Gilmore. He's like, I think I'm gonna make that my trophy room.
Put a little hockey player on there.
Now, Anthony, what's the best line in Whiplash?
This is not your boyfriend's dick. Don't come early. Because that was really the first sign that Andrew saw of Fletcher's darkness and his extreme nature. That was the first horrible line that he said.
Yeah,
and it was shocking for Andrew. He was like, "What did he just say?"
There's only one improvised line in this movie too, surprisingly, for all the things that Fletcher says. But it was all written in script. I can't remember. I think it was one of the ones where he calls him a pansy something. When he calls Andrew like a pansy something as he's leaving the stage for one of the performances. I think the first one.
I thought the mini-me line was improvised.
It's all in the script, man. It's all written in the script.
I can still see you, mini-me.
My best line of the movie is, not quite my tempo. Not quite my tempo. It's just one of the lines he consistently says throughout the film to berate somebody and push them further.
Not quite my tempo.
Because the not quite my tempo thing, they're probably in tempo. Andrew's probably in tempo in that opening scene of the first studio band scene. He's probably in tempo.
I don't think he is.
I can't tell. But the thing is, it doesn't matter if he's rushing or dragging, because no matter what, this was going to happen. He was going to berate him for rushing or dragging or not being on his tempo no matter what.
I think it's that Fletcher's looking for perfection, and he's not perfect yet.
But he was going to do this. This was going to happen his first time in band.
But I don't think he's playing it perfectly.
Well,
I think he's playing it. I think he's playing it as close to perfect as any other drummer can do it, but Fletcher's not looking for that. Fletcher's looking for perfection, like perfect. And Fletcher has the ear to be able to discern the micro difference between what Andrew's doing and what he is really written on the page.
He does have a great ear, Fletcher, because I love the figuring out who the out-of-tune player is, and he goes through everyone. Oh, not here. Oh, it's not here either. Oh, wait. He's here.
Oh, my ears are fine.
My ears are fine. And then he goes after the trombone players and figures out which one.
Here he is.
But he knows who it was, and he berates the guy who cries and leaves, even though he's out of tune.
Because he saw he's the weakest.
Yeah, he's the weakest one. But he didn't know he was out of tune, which is just as bad as being out of tune.
I've been carrying your ass for years. For too long.
He's mean. He's a mean guy, Fletcher. Now, how about we head into our intermission and have some fun?
Oh, yeah.
But before we continue, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast is to become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. It's 2024, and we have the most patronage ever. We're so grateful for all of our supporters. It helps us do the show full time. We couldn't do it without our patrons, and we're trying to get as many as possible because we're giving you awesome perks. You get free episodes every week. Every patron has access to the weekly chat, which is exclusively on Patreon, as well as a bonus episode every week. Plus, Patreons at the minimum tier of $5 get access to the ad-free experience of the show. Many of you understand that we have to put ads on the show because it's how we pay the bills, essentially, that in Patreon. But if you don't want to listen to the ads, all you got to do is be minimum $5 on Patreon, and you'll get every episode ad-free, which you can also link on Spotify and listen on Spotify, which is a great perk in addition to being a patron of the show. We have $10 tier, you get access to the Discord. $25, you get a custom episode. You pick a topic. Anthony, you can pick a topic if you become a $25 patron. We'll do an episode for you. We'll cover whatever international film from 1962 you want us to do.
Thanks, man.
We will cover it. $100 is the granddaddy package. You become an executive producer of the show at the end of main episodes. You get a private watch party, free merch. Anthony will make you a dinner of whatever meal you want.
I'll ship it to you.
Just kidding. He won't do that.
I mean, how am I going to do that? What if they live internationally?
All right. He's going to send you some meatballs.
Going to have to get some dry ice for this.
Some ice packs will do fine. Yeah.
Dry ice.
Dry ice. That's so old school. But anyways, it's the ultimate package. But Patreon's the reason we can do the show full time. Without your support, we can't do it. So thank you so much to all of our patrons around the world. The link is in the description of this episode. It's clickable, very easy to access. To also support the show, you can leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We love to read them on Apple Podcasts. They're so fun. I'll get to one in just a minute. But the stars and the 5-star ratings help us get seen on the platforms by new people. I know you hear this on every show, leave those 5-star reviews, but that's because it actually makes a fucking difference, and we appreciate everyone who actually has done it before. You mean the world to us. So don't you other listeners who haven't done it, but I mean, you can just scroll up right now. Just hit the 5 stars. It'd make Anthony very happy. Please hit the 5 stars.
Please, Lou.
Please let us keep the place, Lou. You don't know where I've been, Lou. You don't know where I've been.
This episode, of course, is sponsored by our friends at movieposters.com, the number one place to get your posters online today. Be sure to use our promo code Raiders10, you know it, at movieposters.com to get 10% off your order right now. Movieposters.com has a huge selection of pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable in their poster library. They have all the Chazelle hits: Whiplash, La La Land, Babylon, First Man. Want to get some Chazelle posters? You got to go to movieposters.com. They have all sorts of sizes, framing, and even backlighting for your poster needs. They make a great gift for the movie lover in your life, as well as a gift for yourself to help show the passion you have for cinema or television. So again, Head on over to movieposters.com for all of your poster needs, and be sure to use our promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order right now.
Let's get into the intermission and begin with the movie quote competition. Are you ready, Anthony?
Ready.
Here we go. Look at this. Look at what they make you give.
Born Identity.
Yes. The Bourne Identity. Clive Owen. The professor.
Do you get headaches?
I get such terrible headaches.
All right, here's my question. Two people talking. When they come out, does it hurt? Every time.
That's awesome. It's X-Men.
Oh, yeah, it's X-Men.
The first one.
Did you say Sex-Men?
No, I said X-Men. I think people just hear what they want to hear.
You were like, it's X-Men.
It's X.
You blended the words.
Men. It's a good quote. Good line. I was thinking about that the other day with Hugh Jackman and being Wolverine Logan. Like, if whoever has to, they'll obviously recast and redo Wolverine.
Yeah.
Whoever gets recast, they're gonna have to go up an uphill battle because people will not accept it. I think a lot of people will enjoy it, and I'm excited for whoever gets cast when they do it. But for someone to play a superhero for so long and be the only live action version of it for 2 decades, holy crap, that's so rare.
Yeah, I mean, if they do Wolverine, they have to do a completely different take, I think.
They should just go short, stocky, just like belligerent, like massive, just like arrogant as
I don't
hell.
understand the Daniel Radcliffe desire.
People want Daniel Radcliffe?
Yeah, fans are dying to have Radcliffe play Wolverine.
I mean, I think he'd do pretty good. He's got the hair. He can do the beard and everything. And he's shorter.
I love Radcliffe, but I don't see him as Wolverine. I don't see him as scary.
I could see it if he just has to get way bigger because he's just always he's a very lean guy.
Yeah,
he's in shape, but like I feel like if he just got huge, I want to see that Wolverine, short and stocky.
I don't know. I think Wolverine should be like more bearish, and I don't see Radcliffe as that intimidating.
Whoa. I could see him doing it. I could see that.
I don't see him playing Wolverine. I don't see it. I don't understand the fan casting. I love him.
He's just Harry Potter forever.
Yeah, I think that's to it. There's an element to it.
You just want to see him do a Patronus charm.
Exactly.
Moving on to guess this movie release year, Anthony. Sweeney Todd.
2008.
2007.
Damn. That's an old movie. Damn. What year did X-Men come out?
So this is before Spidey, which was 2002. I'm going to say 2000.
2000's correct.
Let's go.
2 for 2,
Two
man.
for 2.
2 for 2.
Movie pop quiz time, Anthony. What musician is The Runaways about?
What's their fucking name? The Runaways is about... Shit, what's her name?
I love rock and roll. Put another dime in the jukebox, baby. I love rock and roll.
I can't remember her name.
Put
I don't know.
another dime in, Kristen Stewart plays her, if that helps.
No, I know the movie.
So she was a guitarist and lead singer of a band.
I know this.
Joan Jett.
Joan Jett. Thank you, Joan Jett. Good one. Stump me.
Good question. Like, we got Anthony. We got him.
What film was Hugh Jackman nominated for an Oscar for?
Part of me wants to say Australia. Part of me is like, Logan? Was he nominated for Logan?
No, you're going to have to pick
That's
one.
tough. Or was it just something else?
You have to pick one.
I'm going to say Les Miserables.
3 for 3.
Let's go!
Wow, great job. Les Mis.
I did it, man.
Lead actor nomination, his only one. Great job.
I have some dad trivia.
Let's hear it.
So dad sent in a movie entertainment trivia card game. So we've just been reading them off during intermission lately. First question, Anthony. On Cheers, he played former baseball player Sam Malone, the bar's owner.
Ted Danson.
Ted Danson is correct.
Here's one. This game show is fashioned after the guessing game Hangman.
Wheel of Fortune?
Yes. It's Hangman.
Basically, yeah, it kind of is.
It's not that it kind of is. It is Hangman. It's fucking... Yeah, I guess it's kind of like Hangman. I just said it's based off it.
Oh, this is a good one. On Cartoon Network's Dexter's Laboratory, what was the name of Dexter's pesky sister?
Dee
Dee! Get out of my laboratory!
Dee! On The Simpsons, which character repeatedly tries to murder Bart?
His own father.
No, The Simpsons.
Yeah, he strangles him every episode.
Well, that's just like parenting.
Okay. That's parenting.
I guess you're right. Homer does almost.
Yeah. Did you know they stopped doing that on the show?
I bet they did. It's funny though.
But yeah, I used to strangle him all the time.
But there's a character who's always trying to kill him, like actually trying to murder him.
Oh, it's Wow, it's been a while since I've watched The Simpsons. Holy crap. Who is trying to kill? Is it the mad scientist?
No, good guess.
It's not Mr. Smithers.
It's a small character. Like they're in a lot of episodes, but they're
I can't.
Sideshow Bob.
That's right. Okay.
But also Homer strangling his son. It's a cartoon, guys. It's just a cartoon.
All right, here we go.
You realize Simpsons isn't real, right?
Oh, this is a good question.
We got a comment on TikTok. It was like an old Harry Potter clip, and someone said the word mudbloods, and someone commented, "I really appreciate it if you stop saying the word mudbloods, as I find it offensive to Muggle-born wizards."
They don't exist.
I was like,
They're not real.
You realize the wizards aren't real, right?
This is too much. This is what the internet has done. You can't even say a fictional term from a fictional movie.
I was like, oh my god, you realize that's not real, right?
It doesn't exist.
It's not an offensive word to anybody because it's made up.
Holy crap.
I was like, oh my god, you're seriously?
Do you think elves are real too?
Oh my god. It's so funny.
Okay, here's a good question. Who took over as the host of The New Celebrity Apprentice when Donald Trump became president?
Fuck. Are they an actor?
Yeah.
Are they a comedian?
No.
Did they play sports at all?
I wouldn't say they played sports, no.
I don't know. Terry Crews?
No. Think just an actor.
I know.
Like a super famous celebrity.
I don't know.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold did?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I never even watched The Apprentice, so I don't know.
I never watched it either, but I do remember. That's refreshing my memory that when he
I think you might. Yeah, I think I remember seeing a
Took over
trailer
for
or
like a
something.
year.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right.
What a time.
Who appeared in over 30 Alfred Hitchcock films?
Over 30?
Who appeared in over 30 of them?
Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes. Trick question.
That's a good question.
Great answer.
I was like...
Good answer.
Max, he's worked with an actor like 4 times, I think, or 5.
Maybe 3 or 4, yeah. Well, actually, yeah.
That's an excellent trivia question.
It's an excellent answer.
Thanks. Excellent skiing.
2 Ripley references today.
All right, Anthony, do we have any haters or unsubscribes this episode? I know we filmed yesterday an episode.
Oh, we got some.
Oh,
we got some.
We're not sparse at all with these.
I collected some. We got some good ones. All right, Danny Smith DM'd us a great one. For your unsubscribe segment, number 1, you never pronounce...
I can't wait to hear this.
You never pronounce awry correctly. You always say Ari when it's awry. It hurts my ears. Back-to-back episodes. Number 2, when ranking movies, the closer a film is to number 1 should be considered higher on the list, but you always say lower. It hurts my brain. Unsubscribed. LOL. I'm a huge fan of you guys. I've been watching a ton of your videos. Keep delivering awesome content. Please feature this message in your unsubscribed segment. It would make my day.
That's one of my favorites I've ever heard. That's awesome. That was so funny. Thank you for the support and for tuning in and having so much fun.
That's fucking 3 episodes in a row about Ari.
Is it the same person or no?
Different person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ari.
Awry. It's awry.
So we're saying Ari?
You say Ari.
You say so, but
I never even say the word. You say it.
Awry.
It's awry.
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 Yeah. That's what I've been saying. I've always said awry.
Yeah, we've been losing fans because of it.
No, he said he loves it. Well, he says it hurts his brain, but he still watches. So that's how good the show is. We hurt his brain, but he's still like, fuck, it's good content.
You gotta. I mean, you mispronounce. I mean, it's gonna happen. You called Neiman Nyman.
Are we gonna? Do we really want to go? Hey, you mispronounce stuff all the time. We know this.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You always mispronounce things every episode too.
What did I mispronounce so far today?
Today you mispronounced every word you said.
0 words were mispronounced by
Every
Anthony
word.
today.
I'm editing this one. I'm going to make a compilation of all the things you mispronounced.
Good luck. All right. Also, Colin 6 wrote in our Tom Cruise movie draft, no cocktail, unsubscribed.
Cocktail's like his worst movie.
Yeah,
But
it probably is.
It's a good joke.
And then that's it for unsubscribes.
So for Apple reviews, we don't have any new ones on Apple Podcasts, so I don't have a new one to read. But if you'd like to add to the Apple Podcast reviews, leave one and I will get to it next episode. Anyone wants to write anything, all you need to do is use an email if you don't use Apple Podcasts to sign up. And you don't even need an iPhone. You can do it with Android. Just download the app or go on your desktop.
Wow, technology.
Science, man. Space. Jinx. Anthony, what is your streaming recommendation?
There's another word mispronounced. Streaming, it's a hard one.
I did not mispronounce it at all.
You fucking almost did.
No, I hiccuped. What is your streaming recommendation?
Recommendation. It's in your head now.
Recommendation.
You're psyching yourself out. M, the Fritz Lang film. I watched it last night. It's so fucking good. It's amazing. It's like Zodiac, but like 80 years ago, pretty much. It's amazing. It's about a child serial killer and how both the police and the local criminals start hunting the killer. It's incredible.
My streaming recommendation is Last Days on Max.
Nice.
This is a Gus Van Sant film, a fictional telling of the last days of Kurt Cobain's... What the fuck did I just... Kurt Cobain...
Water came out of my nose. Oh my god!
You're right, I am in my head.
Oh my god! I just choked on water. It came out of my nose. Oh my god! Oh my god! Kurt Cobain. The fuck is wrong with you?
Kurt Cobain's last days before his suicide.
Kurt Cobain. You're going on 16 words mispronounced so far today.
It's a new record.
Kurt Cobain.
That might be the funniest thing ever. All right, let's get back into the brilliant film Whiplash, directed and written by Damien Chazelle. One of my favorite parts of this film is sort of obviously the infusion of jazz, and kind of like I didn't really listen to jazz at all. And we're talking about how this film, like in La La Land, they're talking about bringing jazz to the young kids who aren't really listening to it, keeping it alive because it's dying, but also adding this sort of punk rock element to it. Obviously, the practice and everything in terms of destroying your instruments, that's a very punk rock thing to do, like break a guitar on stage, but to see Andrew like punching through his drum kit and stuff like that, and the intensity and the violence in this film, it reminds me of just punk rock or hardcore rock and roll.
Yeah, when I see him punching the kit and screaming "you piece of shit" over and over again, he's talking about Fletcher. And it's just like that's where it's his frustration with Fletcher. But they do a great job they do humanize Fletcher. And they do show that he does have a heart. And it's after he learns about the death of Sean and he plays that CD of Sean's music, and then he talks so glowingly about him and he even cries. And you see that Fletcher, he's a human. He's not a monster. He acts monstrously, but he's not like a sociopathic, horrible monster. He has a heart and he has love. And this student, Sean, was clearly important to him, and he was proud. He was so proud of him and Sean's success. And just that 3 minutes of him talking about Sean while that music's playing, that I think is one of the most important scenes in the film, because we got to see Fletcher as a human being in that moment. And that's the midway point in the film. We've seen him do horrible things to the students. We've seen him act terribly and abusive. But then we see this moment of levity, and you're like, oh my God, he is like an artist, and he cares so much about this guy who passed away. So I think that was It's vital for the movie working is that little 2-minute scene.
There's two other scenes where we see his humanity.
Yeah.
One of them is obviously towards the end when Andrew has left Schaefer and he stumbles upon this little jazz club and who's playing piano. We're seeing Fletcher play piano. And obviously Fletcher creates a master plan of humiliating Andrew because of this. But for a little bit, we get to see a different side of Fletcher where he's playing, he's performing. We see the passion and we see the love that he has for music and for jazz as he's playing this very sweet, lovely melody on the piano. And, he has a nice conversation at that point, we think he's having a nice conversation with Andrew because he seems like a nice guy. He's out of the classroom. He's out of his godlike presence of being in a jazz studio.
And you can't abuse him in public.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no power dynamic. He's not going to be Fletcher as Andrew knows him.
Yeah, and then there's another scene where we see a very human side of Fletcher, and this is before the first competition performance where, the band's preparing, they're about to go on stage, and then Andrew sees in a side hallway, he sees Fletcher talking to a guy and his little daughter. And from the conversation, it's not spelled out to us, but you can assume that this was a former student of Fletcher's. And he's very sweet to the guy. He's very sweet to the young girl, his daughter. He's like, "Are you starting to play an instrument yet?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, she's starting to take piano lessons." He's like, "Oh, maybe you can come play in my band someday. I really like that." And he gives the guy a hug. And he's like, "Oh, it's great to see you, man. I'll see you around. Stick around for the show." And it's like, oh, even the people he's treated horribly in his classroom, once they leave Schaefer and they go on to careers, you can see he actually cares about these people to an extent. And you can even see a hint of, you could maybe say love at the end of the movie when he sees Andrew's performance on stage and they're flowing with each other and they're building this incredible soul together. You can see the admiration they have for each other.
It really comes from the final two shots of their close-ups where they went to the close-ups near the end, right when Andrew stops playing, but then we're tight on their eyes and you can see JK smile with his eyes. And then that causes Andrew to smile. And then that was it. That's the connection is made. From then on, they're going to have a great relationship, I think. That's how I see the film ending. They're going to have a wonderful relationship for the rest of their lives.
I also really like Melissa Benoit in this film. She plays Nicole, and she actually went on to become Kara Danvers, a.k.a. Supergirl. So she's had a great career in television since being in this movie and some movies here and there, but that's just an awesome story for her to be in Whiplash. Then you're Supergirl. It's pretty badass. Now, Nicole obviously works at the movie theater that Andrew attends frequently with his father, and he's got a crush on her. And I think that Chazelle, he knows human interaction really well, and he brings authenticity to it. If you have a crush on somebody you see regularly that you don't know, at the movies, at the gym, and Andrew does this thing where he orders his food, and she's like, "Swedish fish this time?" He's like, "Oh, not this time." She knows his order, and he looks at her as he's walking to the theater a couple times, but she's just not paying attention. She's like, "I'm at fucking work. I'm not looking at you, bro." So, you kind of always "Oh, is she looking at me? Oh, she doesn't like me. I don't have a chance with her." He eventually asks her out. He builds up the courage. And when I like this movie because of the ups and downs that Andrew goes through, and at this point, when Andrew asks Nicole out, he's made studio band, and he's also asked this girl he's got a crush on out with. So, he's kind of got everything he's ever wanted for a small period of time in this movie. And they have a nice relationship to an extent. They're similar in terms of they don't have many friends, and they're sort of, I guess, away from home in a way. I guess for Andrew,
They both feel out of place.
Yeah, they feel out of place. She goes to a school called Fordham where, she's like, "I don't like anybody there. I don't think they like me. And I have no purpose right now. I don't have a goal. I don't know what I want to do with my life." Whereas Andrew has intense purpose. He has a huge objective. He knows his goal, and he goes to one of the most prestigious music schools in North America at Schaefer. And obviously that's the dynamic that gets in the way between them. And I think a lot of people might interpret their relationship or Andrew breaking up with Nicole as being a dick, because he is a dick to her in terms of, we obviously learn that he's not been spending a lot of time with her. They barely see each other enough as it is already. And he breaks up with her, and he basically tells her, "This is how it's going to go. You're going to just start to resent me because I want to be the greatest drummer of all time. So I'll be spending more time drumming than ever before. And even when we're together, I'll just be thinking about drumming. I'll be thinking about my charts. And so you're just going to resent me. And I'm just going to break it off clean right now." And that's a terrible way to go about it, because you're telling the other person how they're supposed to feel or how they're going to feel. It would have been simpler if he just ended it right there. But he kind of arrogantly goes off on this tangent of "Don't worry, this is what's going to happen. And I don't care about your feelings." That's how I interpret it.
Very arrogantly. And she even spells it out for him by basically repeating again how absurd it is. She's like, so what you're doing is so important, and I'm just nothing, and you're gonna be great, and I'm just gonna be nothing.
And she says, what the fuck's wrong with you?
And he goes, yeah, that's pretty much it. She's like, what's wrong with you? Now, Andrew could have easily been an asshole in this movie and unlikable because of scenes like that. But because he suffers so much, I think because he goes through so much suffering, he goes through so much pain and turmoil, and he really goes through it in this film, that makes the audience care about him. Because even though he acts like an asshole to her, and he's very unlikable to other people, no friends, he's addicted to the other musicians, but because we see him go through so much pain and suffering, for me, as an audience member, that's what keeps him from being unlikable. We stick with him, and we gravitate and respect his perseverance and his drive and his willingness to deal with the sacrifice of the suffering. So that makes him a likable character in my eyes.
Plus, Miles Teller is a very likable actor and character actor, and it shows his intense range because he can really do anything. And when you see, obviously, this, he plays a very normal, kind of dorky guy that is sort of invisible to the rest of the world.
He plays shy really well.
Yeah, shy and nervous. Yeah, extremely well. I get shy and nervous watching his performance. I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to a girl right now. I'm getting hot.
Yeah,
like you can feel it, like him getting sweaty, like talking to a girl.
Because in real life, he's very confident.
Yeah, but also when you see Top Gun Maverick, he's so cool and suave and the man and confident to an extent. Obviously not when he's flying. He loses sometimes. But he gets it. He gets the comments by the end of the
film. You mean the pilot who can't make the shot?
In person, he's playing piano in front of a bar of people, you know what I mean? Shit like that. That's not that he can't take the shot. It's just that he flies slow.
Yeah, flies slow.
Flies slow. But, you know, it shows the range of Miles Teller and how charismatic he is. Even when he's being very shy, he's insanely likable. And I think that's a great testament to his just personality, let alone his acting skill, because he's obviously very, very talented. And I would love to talk about one of my favorite parts of the film, and that's the first jazz competition where studio band's going up for their first competition. And obviously, Andrew's part of the band. He's the backup drummer.
The alternate.
The alternate. And Tanner is the core drummer. And obviously, this is the scene where, you know, Andrew's really just happy to be there. And that's at this point in the film. He's like, I'm happy to be a part of studio band, let alone not being, I'll be an alternate for now, but I'm just going to learn. And, you know, he takes that on. And they play their first set, and it goes really well. And then the second set, Tanner gives Andrew the music to hold on to during their break. And then Andrew, he has the music in the folder, and he goes to a Pepsi machine. He puts so the shot is he puts the folder on the chair, turns to the Pepsi machine, gets a soda, and then Tanner's like, where's the fucking music? We need the music right now. Where is it? And then he looks to the chair, and the music's gone. What happened to the folder?
I think that Fletcher took the folder. I think that he knew Tanner wasn't going to be a great, but Tanner's very good, but he's not going to be what he needs him to be. He sees something in Andrew, and I think that Fletcher, I don't think it was Fletcher's plan. I think Fletcher, he thinks on his feet. He does multiple times in this film, like jazz. You know what I mean? Improvises. He improvises the whole showdown at the end of humiliating Andrew. He got that idea on the spot. I think when he saw Andrew in the jazz club, he's like, oh, here's my chance to get retribution. And so he improvised immediately this whole way of getting back at Andrew. So I think Fletcher looks for opportunities and seizes them. So I think Fletcher just maybe happened to be nearby and took the folder immediately.
That's an insanely cool theory. I like that a lot.
Thanks.
Because if that's true, Damien Chazelle does a great job of throwing you off that scent by having Fletcher scream in the background. He screams Tanner, like right after Tanner comes up to him at the Pepsi machine. And it's possible because Andrew's just kind of in his own. He's like, oh, maybe a janitor came by and swiped it. So I also don't think that Andrew threw the music out. I think Andrew genuinely lost the music.
I agree too. Yeah, I think it's shown clearly that he didn't do anything.
Because I don't think Andrew's really cutthroat yet. He's not willing to just like cuss out or curse out other players at this point because he's just happy to be in studio band. And I know a lot of people theorize that he's the one that got rid of the sheet music. I love the theory that Fletcher's the one that took the music because you can tell that everyone knows that Tanner needs to read the music. He even screams at Andrew in band practice, like, turn the sheets while they're playing, because he's dependent on reading. And as a composer and who runs the band, I'm sure for Fletcher, that's a nuisance for him. That's something that's gonna ruin them at some point. And also, it's an opportunity to test out another drummer.
It's not, and it's also it could have been also an opportunity to test Tanner. You know what I mean?
Good point. That's a great point.
I don't think I think it's clear that Andrew didn't do it, because we stay with Andrew for the whole sequence.
It's very fast, yeah.
Yeah, we're with his perspective. So if he hid the folder, we would have seen him hide the folder, because we're in his perspective for the film. And I don't think Chazelle is trying to fool the audience there. But I do think that Fletcher took the folder as a way. It could have been either as a way to test Tanner, to see if Tanner can pull this off without reading the music. And then Tanner failed that test. But then someone else came up and stepped up, and Andrew stepped up to do it. So I think a lot of people, you could look at it as he's setting up Andrew for the test, but also he could be testing Tanner, this other drummer.
That's a good point.
I think that Fletcher 100% did it.
I love that theory. That's so cool. I'm with you, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
And then so that's why he yells in the background, because he was probably walking by, took the music, knew it was Tanner's, and then immediately screamed Tanner's name, knowing that he didn't have the music, so that he could confront him immediately.
That's actually Damien Chazelle screaming Tanner in the background.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm guessing JK probably wasn't on set that day. That's really cool, man. I like that a lot. I think that makes sense.
And it works with the character.
Because a janitor wouldn't just
A janitor wouldn't
take this off a chair and just put that in the trash.
Yeah, they would think like, oh, this is definitely someone's folder. It would have to be for a reason someone took that.
I like that.
And Fletcher had reasons for taking it.
But this is integral to Andrew's growth as a musician, because he knocks it out of the park and they win the competition. Even when he starts playing, he's like, is he perfect or is he just good enough for right now? They still win the competition. But obviously that sequence starts when they're playing with Andrew on the drums, that Fletcher is just like watching him only. Then eventually he moves away from Andrew and starts paying attention to the rest of the band. And they win.
What are you doing, Tanner? We don't have time for alternates. Core only.
And now Andrew is the core of studio band, but just temporarily, like we talked about earlier.
But I would say, so all the other musicians, they don't trust Andrew. And the piano player's like, you don't touch my fucking folder. And then Tanner's like, do not touch my drum set. But ultimately, Fletcher was completely right where he said to Tanner, like, the folder the sheets are your responsibility. Why would you give them to the alternate? They're your responsibility. And so Tanner lost the job. It wasn't taken from him. He wasn't tricked. He should have held on to that music the whole time, especially if he needs it. So Tanner lost the job.
The next big sequence in terms of a competition, we have the Dunelin competition.
Oh my God.
Now, before the competition, the day before, which turns into an all-night session, is in-class studio band. We have 3 drummers now competing for the part for studio band. We have Neiman, we have Connolly, and we have Tanner. Now, Fletcher puts these three guys through hell while they're trying to find the drummer to play the part which is the next day, which is insane. And they're there till 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and he's pushing them to their limits. They are sweating their asses off. They're all bleeding all over the drum kits. And eventually, Neiman wins the part, but it's an insane sequence of basically musical chairs on a drum set, back and forth, all through them, back to back, until eventually Andrew earns the part by drumming faster and harder and more for a longer period of time than anybody, and he earns the parts. And then Fletcher tells the other two to wipe the blood off his drum kit. It's intense. It's really intense.
And again, like we said earlier, it's not like a congratulations, you got the part. It's like, Neiman, you earned it.
And it's interesting the way that Fletcher treats the drummers compared to the other musicians. I wonder if that's because drumming might be an insanely important part of the band, clearly. And he's even like apologizing to the other band members, like, oh, I'm sorry about this, guys, but take a shit, take an hour, have a coffee break. We're gonna be here for a while. So I apologize to the other musicians, but we're gonna find a drummer for tomorrow.
It might be more important to Fletcher as someone who's looking for the next Charlie Parker. Maybe drumming's his favorite, and in his opinion, the most prized part of the band. And maybe so Whiplash and Caravan, the music he writes, is more drum centric.
Well, I don't think that he's specifically looking for the next drum.
no,
legend.
yeah, but
I think it's Charlie Parker's just, I think, an ambiguous term for the next great jazz musician.
No, yeah, I know that. But I'm saying maybe Fletcher does covet the drummer more than anyone else, and he writes his music to make it more challenging and more drum centric than other kinds of jazz songs.
Is he the writer of the music?
I'm guessing that Whiplash and Caravan are his.
Hold on, let me check that. I'm not sure about that.
I think that's what it's implied by me.
He's just a conductor. I don't know if he's a composer. In Whiplash, let's see.
I think that
does Fletcher.
I've always assumed that he's the composer of
music.
Whiplash and Caravan, because they play other songs that aren't his. But I think I've always assumed that he's the writer of Whiplash, that it's his thing.
Blah blah blah. Who wrote music in Whiplash? Obviously, Justin Hurwitz is the composer of the film. What genre? Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't find anything right now.
Did Fletcher write the Whiplash song?
And Caravan. That's a good question. I've never really thought about that. I've always just assumed he was the conductor and the leader of the band, obviously. What are you seeing over there?
Hold on. Maybe I can find. It's gonna say it on the
sheet music.
Yeah, on the sheet music.
Find a close up of Whiplash sheet music.
It doesn't say composer. It just says Whiplash.
I always thought it was more of sort of music that everybody knows or learns in jazz schools. You know what I mean?
No, I've always looked at it as Whiplash is Fletcher's baby. Like, that's his music that he wrote. That's how I look at it.
And that's why he calls it his tempo.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like, that's his tempo. Whiplash is his song. He wrote it, and that's why he's so obsessive about finding the right players for all the parts. So I look at it as the whole thing of my tempo is like, this is mine. I wrote this. But he is a conductor. I've always looked at it as he's the writer of Whiplash.
All right, well, maybe someone can look into that and let us know more information on that. But, I mean, we can go with that. So this competition, the Dunnelan competition's intense because they leave the session of, obviously, Andrew earns the part, and his hands are covered in blood. He's exhausted, and they walk out that alley. And for the audience, Fletcher goes, all right, tomorrow, 5 p.m., give yourself 2 hours to get there for the show. And you're like, he has to play tomorrow? And also, when they pick Andrew as the drummer, when Fletcher picks him, they begin. They're like, all right, now we can start practicing. That's insane what he goes through in the sequence. And then, obviously, Dunnelan competition is a nightmare of bad luck for Andrew because the bus he's on gets a flat tire. He gets a rental car. He's late. He forgets his sticks. He gets there on time to get ready for band, obviously, to get set up on stage, but he forgets his sticks at the rental car place. And then in a rush to get back, he gets hit by a car and gets T-boned, probably running a red light.
And Fletcher made the mistake of letting him play because he was clearly fucked up. But it's a part of the movie where I'm like, I wonder why Fletcher let Andrew play, because he was clearly messed up, covered in blood, wounded. And Fletcher thought about it for a moment, and then he's like, okay, you're on in 10 if you have your own sticks.
Maybe he's like, let's see what you got.
Yeah.
Because this is like his prodigy right here. Let's see what you can do here.
And he's just covered in blood. And then, obviously, Andrew fails, drops his sticks, and then he attacks Fletcher in front of the crowd, and that's what kicks him out of school. And then it sets up the third act of Andrew being approached by the counsel of the victim of the Sean case, asking for him to rat out Fletcher as being abusive emotionally and physically to students, causing really the leading to the cause of Sean's suicide and other students. And that's what eventually kicks out Fletcher. And I think that Andrew was just like, I've lost everything. Fuck it. I'm taking him with me.
Yeah. They both destroy each other to get what they want, and they don't realize that that's what it takes to get their goals achieved. And then obviously, Andrew's living a life outside of music. He's got a job at a sub place, at a cafe. He has an apartment now. His dad's helping him out. He fills up the cabinets with Gushers. They go to the movies still. They watch movies in his living room. And he's got a new life until he obviously stumbles upon Fletcher in that jazz club. And one of the best conversations in the film, obviously, is when they're drinking and talking about jazz. And Fletcher, one of the most iconic lines in the film, he says, there are no two words in the English language more harmful than good job. And saying that, if you want someone to achieve greatness or if you want to achieve greatness, you have to push them. And then Andrew's trying to counter it. Is there a line? Is there a line to making the next Charlie Parker? Do you have to put them through that? And then Fletcher's like, of course there isn't, because the next Charlie Parker wouldn't get discouraged.
The line, there would be no line for them.
Yeah.
And so, and he's saying like, I'm looking for Charlie Parker, the next great, and a great wouldn't be discouraged. They would keep pushing. And non-greats, just like average musicians, would just give up or walk away.
And then what's he say to him? I never had a Charlie Parker, right in Andrew's face. He's like, I tried. No one can take that away from me. I honestly really tried, but I never had a Charlie Parker. And then Andrew's like, in my eyes, I see like Andrew like pissed off by this. He's still pushing him. Then obviously invites him to drum at the JVC festival.
And what's interesting is Andrew calls Nicole, invites her to the performance, and learns that she has a boyfriend. And in a way, I think that gave him the wherewithal to be like, okay, I'm just gonna go for this again.
I still have nothing.
Still have nothing. And I think it's also a moment where he realized he ruined relationships and sacrificed things that maybe he also wanted. And then that was the decision where, like, I think he finally chose drums. Because if he wanted a relationship, if he didn't want a relationship, he wouldn't have called her. You know what I mean?
He was like kind of testing the waters.
Exactly.
In a way.
And then he's like, okay, I'm going to go full tilt, balls to the walls, just drumming. And the JVC Festival is great. It's an incredible plan by Fletcher.
Well, it's important first and foremost because he tells the band, this is a life-changing crowd. These people, they make one call and you got the Lincoln Center job. You got the Blue Chips job. You are set basically for your career going forward. Or if you mess up, they'll never forget.
Yeah, he says, these people, these cats, they never forget. And so he's setting Andrew up for a complete failure. And basically he's trying to ruin Andrew's future and his life as a drummer. He's trying to just completely destroy Andrew, like how Andrew destroyed Fletcher. And it's a really smart plan. He gives Andrew the wrong song.
Well, he tells him we're going to play Whiplash Caravan, the stuff from Studio Ben.
Yeah, and then they start playing something different that Andrew's never heard before, and he can't play with them. And he ends
called Up Swingin'.
Up Swingin', and then he just stops and he walks out. And like we talked about earlier, his father embraces him in the back room. But then Andrew decides, fuck it, I'm going to go back out there. I'm going to do what I want to do.
But also before they start playing, Fletcher comes up to Andrew on the key, says, you think I'm fucking stupid? I know it was you.
Yeah.
And then Andrew's like, wait, oh my God, he knows.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And then the drum solo is amazing. This is where, the editor, this is what he won the Oscar for, the editing of this. Because it's not like, so they got a ton of coverage of the performance. And first of all, I think it was really smart. They do not show any reaction shots of other people while Andrew's destroying the drums.
And we never see the reaction from the crowd.
Yeah, so I thought it was so smart. They only stick to Andrew and Fletcher with the editing. There's no other shots. Like, I think every other director would have been like, showed like the bass player, like, whoa, this guy's killing it. Or like someone else like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. But they didn't. They didn't show any reaction shots of anyone. It's all Andrew and Fletcher. So first of all, that's the first smart decision they made. And second of all, they got so much coverage. They have different kinds of shots, different kinds of setups. They have insert shots, close-ups, wides, what have you, overheads, all this stuff. But it's not like they didn't just like edit it all together. Like, oh, like now an insert, now a wide, blah 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 blah. There's like chapters to the edit of the performance, and so for example, all of the like the tight insert shots, they are all together in a group in the second half of the performance. And we go from wider to closer. And I like how they didn't just like throw in randomly, oh, this is a cool shot, that's a cool shot. There's actually like a storyline to the edit of the performance of Andrew's drum solo. And then combining that with the reactions of Fletcher and then the close-ups of Miles Teller's face at the end. I thought it was just brilliant editing. And it told its own story outside of like, let's just put together a bunch of cool shots of the performance.
Yeah, and this whole sequence is incredible. When he starts playing and then Fletcher comes up to him halfway through this opening of the solo, he's like, what are you doing, man? And Andrew's so confident. and he tells him, "I'll cue you in." And then Fletcher's like, "Oh, he's feeling it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All
Oh, yeah."
right.
You can see Fletcher is getting off on this moment. He's like feeling it, dude. This is the best he's felt in his entire life. You can see in his eyes, I think I've finally done it. I think I've finally created a Charlie Parker. I think I've finally achieved my goals. And it's really incredible drumming. When I watched this movie, I've seen it like 6 times. I am freaking moving with the music. This whole solo is incredible.
I love the shot where he whip pans it left and right with the drums as he's going left and right on the drum kit.
Yeah, and the drum solo itself is its own story. We have builds and we have climax, so it slows it down, then he builds it back up. And I love the only other bandmate we really see reacting to this is there's a quick wide shot of the bass player. He's like looking at Andrew like, holy fucking shit, this is the craziest shit I've ever heard in my life. But aside from that, like you said, we only see Andrew and Fletcher, but that's just like a side shot of that character and that actor. And it's sensational when they build it up and Fletcher rips his jacket off and throws it on the ground. He's got the guns out. He's ready to go. He's got everyone queued up, ready to finish this off. And then, bam, this great finale. And then the shot of cutting to each other. They're both smiling because they've finally both achieved their greatest desires. Andrew is one of the greats and maybe the greatest drummer alive right now in the jazz world. And Fletcher has created the next Charlie Parker, and he knows it. And they finish off with the great finale.
And I think that it's all set up by the story about Charlie Parker. And he a year later, he got on stage and he pulled out the greatest drum solo anybody's ever heard. And so I like to think that this performance is the greatest drum solo that's ever been performed since Charlie Parker's solo. That's how I look at it. And that's how like powerful it is for Fletcher, someone who knows the music. He understands it that much, and this is how big it is. And it's monumental for Fletcher, I think.
Yeah. And Charlie Parker's not a drummer. He's a saxophonist,
Yeah.
saxophone player. So just in general, like the
solo
story,
yeah.
the story of Charlie Parker is ambiguous to any instrument, any player. But yeah, I love this movie, and what an ending. And your hair is standing up if your hair's not standing up when you watch this finale, then I don't know what to tell you, man. You don't get
Your
movies
hair's standing up.
If your hair's not, you're like goosebumps. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I got
It's a common expression, Anthony. My hair's standing.
It's an expression, but I would say goosebumps would be more.
Hair is standing on. That is a common expression.
I'm saying like getting goosebumps in this is better phrase for the situation.
It's an idiom.
I feel like when your hair's standing up, it's like scared. I know what an idiom is.
No, that's just cats.
I think hair
I
standing
think you spend
up.
too much time with judo.
No, I think hair standing up is like it's scary.
That is an expression of shock and just
Yeah.
It's dude. It totally fits. It totally fits.
I know what an idiom is.
Are you sure? Are you aware of the term? It's not like your hair's. So Anthony, your hair's not literally like
Standing up.
like you got electrocuted. Like my hair wouldn't be like a flat top. Like it's just an expression where you can feel tingling on your skin and like the hair follicles all around your body.
Oh, I get it. Your hair follicles are standing up. No, but yeah, I get goosebumps every time I see the end of this movie. It is no matter how many times I've seen it.
Yeah, how do you interpret it then? So at the end of the movie, I think you just said that him and Andrew and Fletcher have a great relationship. Is that what you said afterwards? Like,
I
that's
think
what you
after
think?
I think after this, they're gonna have a great relationship, working relationship and friendship.
That's interesting.
Because I think Andrew reached the peak, and from now on, Andrew's gonna be an extremely successful drummer. He's gonna be like playing at Lincoln Center and stuff, and Fletcher will like see his performances, and I think they'll be good friends after this.
You think it'll be just like in that hallway with the piano player with his daughter?
I think it'll be more so,
Yeah.
because he's the guy that Fletcher's been looking for all his life. And so I think that Fletcher and Andrew are actually going to become very close after this.
Yeah, so if Andrew's the best jazz drummer in the country right now because of Fletcher, obviously he'll say, like, it's because of Fletcher.
Yeah.
And that's all Fletcher wants. Even you could probably argue that Fletcher doesn't even want the prestige. He just wants to know that he's done it.
I think Fletcher just wants to be able to, like, I created this. He doesn't need anyone to know about it. But he just needs to find that player.
And that goes into this insane God complex of the character, which we haven't really even talked about at all, which I think the lighting of Fletcher in a lot of the sequences show his godlike presence amongst the characters and for the audience, but also he has the godlike personality where I created this person. Like you just said, those words mean that he has a God complex, which he does, 100%.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When he's in studio band, when he's in front of the band, he is God. What he says goes. They listen to every command of his. They are dead silent, almost beyond military discipline. they are controlled completely by Fletcher.
I look at Fletcher as someone who didn't have the talent, but he had the will. He just couldn't become a great musician. But he could have if he had more talent. And so since he was a failure as being a great musician, then he's like, I want to hone and craft the great. I can make them happen.
I'm a god. I'm trying to find my chosen one, basically.
But I think
I'm trying to find my Messiah.
I look at Fletcher as someone who came from I wouldn't say failure, but like in his eyes, failure to be a great. I think he realized that early on in his career that I'm never going to be a great, but I can make the great. And I know what to look for, and I know how to hone a great. So I'm going to pursue that with my life. I'm going to try to find the next legend.
Man, this
and for him, that's enough, because he feels like. He says it would be depriving the world of like the next great musician. So in his eyes, he thinks he sees himself as doing the world a service by trying to find this next legend.
Yeah, he says to Andrew in that jazz club sequence where they're having the cocktail, where he says, if Charlie Parker never became Charlie Parker, then that'd be a tragedy to the world.
Yeah.
There'd be no
exactly.
bird.
Yeah. So I think that he's trying, in his eyes, to make the world a better place by finding the next bird.
I like it. I love this movie. It is itself a legendary film, and I think it's going to age so well. I also agree, like I said earlier, that I think this is still Damien Chazelle's best film, even though it's a $3 million movie with limited techniques. You can see the techniques there.
Yeah.
It's just he doesn't have the budget. Like, you can see some of the shots are so artistic and so Damien Chazelle in his style, but they couldn't afford to do it with every shot. But now he can do that with every single shot.
Yeah, I mean, his other films are better looking and they're better made.
Yeah, Babylon's phenomenal.
Yeah,
it looks so good.
Babylon's a wonderful production. But I still think that overall as a story and as a film, Whiplash is the best thing he's done.
I think so, too.
And that's not saying anything negative about his other films.
La La Land has 14 Oscar nominations.
He's an amazing director. But I do think that some directors, their best work is their early ones, and so far, I would say it's just the fact. It's just that Whiplash is a perfect movie.
Yeah,
it's a perfect movie.
I mean, Scorsese made Taxi Driver in 1976.
Yeah,
that's a long time ago, and still arguably his best movie. Mm-hmm. For a lot of people, it's up there. And I mean, it's been 50 years since he made that almost. So he's still early in his career. There's nothing wrong with an early film being your best because, I mean, Tarantino with Reservoir Dogs, a lot of people, they think that's
Pulp
his
Fiction.
best movie. Yeah, Pulp Fiction, 1994.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's actually incredible.
Weezer. The Blue Album.
That's not their first album, is it? Is it their first studio album?
Blue Album was their first one, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually, I think you're right.
Yeah, Blue Album.
My name is Jonas.
Yeah. First album, bro.
That's a banging album.
Yeah, man.
That's a good record, man. That's a good. What a picture.
What a picture.
What a record. I miss referring to albums as records.
When did you?
People still do.
No, I mean, it's not like you used to. You said it like you used to say it.
You know, I miss remember in the 90s?
We never called them
back
records.
Back in the 70s and 80s, even in the 90s, we still called them records.
No, we called them albums.
It wasn't until CDs came out when we were,
we called them albums.
Of age.
We called them albums.
Albums than CDs.
You did not grow up in the 70s. we always called them albums.
Maybe I should have.
Maybe you should have. Go to India. Go to India. Nobody stop you. Go to India.
Knocked up. All right. Do you have anything else on Whiplash, Anthony?
No, it's 10 out of 10. I gave it a 5-star Letterboxd rating last night.
10 out of 10. It absolutely is a 5-star film on Letterboxd, 10 on IMDb. I think it will remain a top 50 movie on IMDb forever.
Yeah, with that many ratings, it's not going to go away.
With almost a million ratings.
Yeah.
And it's an 8.5. That's insane. It's an all-time movie. And people know it. It's universally loved, And I was so excited to finally do a solo episode on this. Because
I know, it's been forever.
We talked about it in 2021, but that was a La La Land versus Whiplash movie. It was kind of talking about them both at the same time. But I liked it because it deserves meticulous attention. And I really loved watching it again, I think for the 5th or 6th time. But I hadn't seen it in a few years.
Same, I think it's been like a couple years since I've seen it last.
Man, the music is so good. Justin Hurwitz is such a phenomenal composer. And I think this showed a great talent for him as well in an early film because he's been working with Damien Chazelle in all of his movies, and they knew each other when they were in school. So it's really cool that they have built such a great career together.
They have a great symbiosis. And he's got that now with Linus Sandgren as well. as DP.
I think Chazelle is one of the best directors working today.
Oh, for
He
sure.
really is.
Absolutely.
And Whiplash is a banger. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Don't forget to become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, leave the comments everywhere on every single video. Share this with your friends and family members. Even if you're listening on Spotify and Apple, sharing a podcast is the best way for it to grow organically. Leave those 5-star ratings on Spotify and Apple. Thank you all so much for tuning in.
See you next time.
This episode was executive produced by our chosen one patrons, Cody Moen, Andrew Hagan, Becca Keene, Benjamin Cook, Calvin Murphy Griggs, Nicholas Martin, Darian Singleton, Tyler McFly, Andrew Hagan. Our chosen one patrons are our biggest supporters. Thank you so much. Raiders of the Lost Podcast is a mirror image production. Sound mixing done by Jacob Kossler. Opening music by Chase Jackson.